Okay, let's dive right in. Have you ever really stopped to think about the invisible architecture of your life? You know, the hidden scripts that are running your day every single day? We're talking about habits. And they aren't just little routines. They are these powerful, automated systems that are literally shaping who you are and what you end up achieving.
And get this, research from places like Duke University has uncovered a pretty staggering number. It turns out that nearly half of our daily actions, about 45%, aren't conscious decisions at all. Nope, they're just habits, running on complete autopilot while our conscious brain is busy thinking about other things. That's almost half of your entire day being guided by subconscious programming. Insane, right?
So what if you could grab the keyboard? What if you could finally understand the code behind all these automatic behaviors and start, consciously designing them? Well, that's exactly what we're going to get into. By understanding the science, you can go from being a passenger in your own life to being the actual architect of it.
So first up, why does our brain even do this? Why does it work so hard to turn our choices into these automatic routines? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. It's all about efficiency. Your brain is basically lazy, in a good way. It's always looking for ways to save effort, and habits are its ultimate energy-saving strategy.
See, every single habit follows the same neurological journey. It starts out in your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain that does all the heavy lifting, the active decision-making. But as you repeat a behavior over and over, your brain goes, hey, I can automate this, and it creates a shortcut. It literally offloads control to a more primitive area called the basal ganglia, which is a total pro at running automatic patterns. The action becomes what scientists call a chunk, just a single, fluid routine that runs without you even having to think about it.
All right, so if we're going to become the programmer, we absolutely need to understand the code. And the good news is, all habits, the good ones, the bad ones, the simple ones, the complex ones, they're all built on the exact same fundamental structure. So let's crack it open.
At the heart of every habit you have is a simple, powerful feedback loop in your brain. Now, different experts have given it slightly different names, and they might break it down into 3 steps or 4 steps, but don't get hung up on that. They're all describing the very same core engine that drives our behavior.
Okay, now this slide is where it all clicks into place. It really unifies the work of all the big names in this field. Let's walk through this because this is a huge aha moment. You've got Charles Duhigg, who calls it the cue, routine, and reward. Then James Clear expands on that with cue, craving, response, and reward. And then you have B.J. Fogg from Stanford, who talks about a prompt, a behavior, and a celebration. Do you see the pattern? It's always a trigger, then an action, and then some kind of positive outcome that tells your brain, hey, that was good, let's do that again.
So what's the fuel for this loop? It's dopamine, but probably not in the way you think. We usually think dopamine is the pleasure you get from the reward. But its real magic in forming habits is actually in the anticipation. See, when a habit is new, you get a dopamine spike after the reward. But as that habit gets locked in, your brain literally rewires itself. The dopamine spike actually shifts, so it happens right after the cue. That's what creates the craving, that wanting that pushes you to complete the action.
Okay, so that's the theory, that's the science. Now for the fun part, the practical, how to actually do it, user manual. We're going to see how all this stuff builds into an incredibly powerful framework for consciously installing the habits you actually want in your life.
We're going to use James Clear's 4 laws of behavior change as our roadmap here. I mean, this is just a simple, brilliant checklist for engineering good habits. And each law perfectly corresponds to a stage of that habit loop we just talked about, giving us a specific lever we can pull to make any new behavior stick.
So law number 1 is make it obvious. A habit has to have a clear trigger, right? One way is with an implementation intention, where you get super specific. I will meditate for 2 minutes at 7 a.m. in my living room. Even better, though, is habit stacking. This is where you piggyback a new habit onto one you already do. For example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will journal for 1 page. And this is where Law 2, make it attractive, comes in, because you can pair the new habit with something you already want to do, like I will only listen to my favorite podcast while I'm on my daily walk. The anticipation of the podcast actually pulls you into doing the walk.
Next up, Law 3, make it easy. This is so important because it's where most of us fail. We try to do way too much, way too soon. The 2-minute rule is the perfect antidote. You just scale your new habit down so it takes less than 2 minutes to do. Read 30 pages a day becomes read 1 page. Go for a run becomes put on my running shoes. And then, to lock it all in, you use Law 4, make it satisfying. Your brain craves immediate rewards, so right after you put on those running shoes, you grab a calendar and put a big fat X on today's date. That little satisfying win tells your brain, hey, that was good, let's do that again tomorrow, and it completes the loop.
And this brings us to such a critical point.
So many of us get obsessed with perfecting a new habit right from day one. But what really, truly matters is just being consistent. You have to standardize the behavior. Make it a non-negotiable part of your day long before you ever worry about optimizing it. Just master the art of showing up first. The rest will follow.
And to make things even easier on ourselves, we can actually align our new habits with our body's natural brain chemistry. Neuroscientist Andrew Huberman has this great model where he suggests dividing your day into 3 phases. Phase 1, the first 8 hours you're awake, that's when your brain is primed for focus and for overcoming what he calls limbic friction, which is really just a fancy term for that feeling of procrastination or resistance to doing hard stuff. So this is the time to schedule your most difficult habits. Then phase 2 is better for creative, lower focus tasks. And phase 3 is all about rest, which is when your brain does the crucial work of consolidating all that learning and hardwiring your new routines while you sleep.
Okay, so we've got a solid plan for how to build good habits. But what about all those habits we want to get rid of? Well, the great news is it's not some brand new process we have to learn. We just have to flip the script.
To break a bad habit, we literally just invert the 4 laws. So instead of making the cue obvious, we make it invisible. Hide the junk food so you don't see it. Instead of making it attractive, you make it unattractive by really focusing on the negative consequences. And instead of making it easy, you do the opposite. You add friction to make it more difficult. Want to watch less TV? Every time you're done, unplug it and take the batteries out of the remote. That tiny bit of hassle can be just enough to break the automatic pattern.
And all of this highlights a fundamental truth about human behavior. Relying on sheer willpower is almost always a losing game long term. The most disciplined people out there aren't heroes with superhuman self-control. They're just people who are smart about designing their environment to eliminate temptation. There's a stunning study of Vietnam veterans that proves this perfectly. Researchers found that about 20% of soldiers had become addicted to heroin over there, but when they came back home, an incredible 95% of them just quit, practically overnight. Why? Their environment changed. All the cues that triggered the habit were just gone.
But what about those really stubborn, deep-rooted habits? You know, the almost unconscious stuff like biting your nails or picking at your skin or a nervous tic. For those kinds of things, just inverting the laws might not be enough. So, is there a more targeted kind of surgical approach we can use? Well, yes, there is. It's an evidence-based therapy called habit reversal training, or HRT for short. It's a really straightforward 3-step process. Step 1 is awareness. You train yourself to notice the exact moment the urge to do the bad habit begins. Step 2, you develop a competing response. That means choosing a new action that is physically impossible to do at the same time as the old habit. So if you bite your nails, your competing response might be to clench your fists tightly. And third, you reinforce this new, better behavior. You're basically getting in there and consciously overriding the old, faulty programming with the new, better script. So when you put all of this together, you realize that the crucial point here is a fundamental shift in perspective. It's about moving away from this obsession we have with goals and outcomes, and instead putting our focus on the daily processes and systems that actually produce those results in the first place. And what that means is we have to be patient. I'm sure you've heard that it takes 21 days to form a habit. Well, that's a total myth. It actually came from a misinterpretation of a plastic surgeon's observations back in the 60s. A much better study found that the average time is actually 66 days. But look at the range. It can be anything from 18 days all the way up to 250 days. The point is, the timeline doesn't matter. Just being consistent does.
And this right here, this brings us to maybe the most important takeaway of this whole thing. Goals are fine. They're good for setting a direction. But it's your systems that actually make the progress. You know, you can have a goal to run a marathon. But if your system is hitting the snooze button every morning, you're just never going to get there. The thing is, winners and losers in life often have the exact same goals. The only thing that separates them is the quality of their systems.
So let's forget about the huge, grand ambitions just for a second. Forget about the finish line. The real question, the one that can actually change your life, is this. What's the one tiny 2-minute system you can build starting today that casts a vote for the person you really want to become?